Before we start, I would love to just pause for a moment and say thank you to the three of you sitting here for the work that you do in your communities with families and children. It's some of the most important work that's being done in the world. So, thank you. And I'd love to start the conversation by hearing a little bit about what inspired all of you to take on this huge undertaking of working with your communities and working with children. Children are a little unpredictable. I have two very small ones, so I know. So Megan, what inspired you to help found the Mindful Schools?
Well, I don't think I knew that Mindful Schools was going to be the outcome. But what I find myself saying when we have trainings and people are wanting to get trained in bringing mindfulness to youth is that everybody in the room has a similarity in the way that they came, which is they learned mindfulness, and it had an effect on them, often a profound effect, to the point where they thought, I really wish that I had this when I was younger. Mm-hmm. And then the next thought is, oh, kids should get this. And so I think that was why I got inspired myself, was my own mindfulness practice and the impact on my life and the recognition of the importance of it along with all the other things in our life. And then I had the opportunity to work with kids in a lot of different contexts. And
that wasn't really your choice at the time.
That was
I remember hearing your story.
Yes. I didn't think I liked kids. And I definitely didn't think that I would be good with them. But each opportunity kind of was this beautiful... I think kids awaken softness and love, and without them in the world, that we wouldn't really have the kind of direction toward peace. Mm-hmm. And so I always left these moments with kids feeling like I got something more than they got something. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of brought those two worlds together and just decided to experiment with it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Neither.
Well, I guess what inspired me to get into helping youth and through yoga and mindfulness is honestly the change that I saw in myself in college. When I was in college, I partied. I was a wild guy, and it wasn't always the safest behavior.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm sure none of us can relate to that here.
I'm sure you can. But honestly, when I tapped back into my inner peace and I got back into my yoga and my mindfulness practice, I kind of saw like the transformation in myself, and it was really amazing to really achieve that peace, that inner peace, and being able to tap into that whenever I wanted to. And we knew, my brother, myself, and our other business partner, our brother from another, Andy Gonzalez out there, we knew that we wanted to do something to help, but we had no idea what it was, and we kind of like saw that this would be tools that could really help out a lot of the people that need help, those underserved communities that we wanted to touch. So
yeah, great. And you guys kind of have an interesting upbringing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I guess us growing up in the city in West Baltimore, people didn't really practice yoga and meditation and, stuff like that. So we kind of kept it in our houses. We didn't really tell people about, our practice. We were like closet yogis. And, and it's just something that we just did. We would come downstairs, see our dad in the headstand for like, it seemed like hours at a time. And he'd make us sit down and meditate with him before school. And, we were like vegan back in the day before it was cool, so it was just, it was something different, but it was who we were. And then they kind of made sure that the school that we went to, Friends School, Quaker school, it kind of reinforced the whole message that they were trying to teach us at home. Yeah. And it was a different upbringing, but thank them for it. We really do.
Yeah. And Ali, so, we're all, I know I'm a parent, and I know we all struggle with kind of having this balance between technology with our youth and being reflective at the same time. So, how are you approaching that, either in conversations with your community or the children that you work with? How do you think about it? How do you think that through, that kind of dichotomy?
I think the biggest thing that we talk to our kids and our community about are just being disconnected. Like, there's a lot when people are they have technology in their face, they kind of get disconnected from the real world, and they get disconnected from the people around them. And I think the biggest thing they're disconnected from is themselves. Like, they don't know what's going on in here and what's going on in here. So we're constantly telling people to take your time and really, really figure out and get to know your real self, like your inner self. And then from there, like, those connections start to grow. You start loving yourself, then you start to love the people in your neighborhood. Then you start to see, you get your scope goes beyond your neighborhood. Then you feel like you're connected to the entire planet. And it's just a bigger sense of interconnectedness, and it kind of defeats that disconnect that they get when they're just kind of stuck here with a little screen in their face.
Yeah, and is that something you find you're having conversations about pretty regularly? Does it come up?
All the time. I mean, our kids it's funny, like when we started with the first group we started with, like their connection was to like the 4 square blocks around the house. So they saw that those were the things that were achievable for them in their lives, what they saw the people doing around them, which may not have been the most positive things, but that's what they saw that their life was. They didn't see people graduating from school. They didn't see people achieving to go to college. They didn't see people striving to get these really good jobs or to help out their community. And then once we showed them that they were connected to everything, like our kids are going to college, our kids are coming back and helping in our after school program, and like they're lifting up the people around them as well. So it's definitely something that comes up all the time.
Yeah, and I remember having the conversation with you guys that 5 of your original students that went through the first year or 2 are coming back this year or next year to teach for you.
Actually, this past Thursday when we flew out here to the conference, it was the first time that we were ever able to let our program run without us being there. And our first group of students were the people who facilitated it. So It was awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. That's beautiful. Yeah. And Megan, how are you having those conversations, or how do you think it through about that ability to be reflective and also have your media? I remember we've had some conversations about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole conference is about the reality that technology is here and it's not going anywhere, and we like it. So then the question becomes, what are we doing to ensure that we're also connecting with ourselves and other people? And I think that's why programs like ours are popping up. We're kind of having to reinsert the things that create the ability to regulate our nervous system. And I think everybody, even though we love technology, we can acknowledge that generally the impact on our nervous system is like heightened and less calm. And the things that used to be in place to kind of regulate ourselves aren't there in the same way. Really basic things like being able to spend time outdoors and being in nature that kind of naturally regulates our nervous system. And I think less and less kids are spending time with regulated adults. And so we're having to kind of reintroduce to kids the things that they already have access to inside themselves. They've just sort of forgotten how to access them.
Yeah, thank you. And I think this would be really helpful for everyone here in the audience to think about how we really get this out into our communities and how we scale this. I had the honor of teaching the Mindful Schools curriculum for the first time at my son's school this past year. It was one of the most incredible experiences of my life so far. And I had quite a few parents come up to me after the first time. I kind of knew what they were going to say a few times after. And, I'm so glad it was you. I'm so glad it was you doing this, because they could see themselves in me, in my community. And it really struck me and the importance of bringing this from within a community. And I know the 2 of you are serving the community that you grew up in. Mm-hmm. And I also know the Mindful Schools is kind of really shifting your focus from having teachers go in to from outside of the community to really teaching within the community. So can you speak to that a little bit and the importance of kind of what that's meant?
Yeah.
Want to start, Megan?
Sure. So Mindful Schools started out by being a direct service organization where our instructors went into schools. And like you said, now we're sort of changing our emphasis where we're offering more trainings, and that's in response to the really quickly growing interest in this field. And the question that I've always been wrestling with is breadth or depth. And I had an advisor actually that kept asking me, Megan, do you want to go deep or do you want to go broad? And it took me a long time to land on both. And I think that really the best way for this field to grow is for programs to be arising within the community. And that's why these guys are so successful. And they're offering a much more comprehensive engagement with the kids than Mindful Schools is able to. And it's more of a wraparound engagement and ongoing and long term. And Mindful Schools is now wanting to train people to have the same capacity that these guys got so that they can go back to their own communities and offer what's right for that environment. And so I feel like I want to be able to serve both. I want the movement to be recognizable kind of broadly, but I also want to be able to give people the level of training and resources so that what they're offering is really coming from an embodied place.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thanks. Would you like to speak to that in your communities, either one of you?
I know when we first started, we thought that we were going to, it's funny, we thought we were all about trying to help and save as many people as we could and empower them with tools and all these things. But then it started to get a lot bigger than the three of us were able to handle. So we kind of got a little worried, and people used to ask us, well, can you guys clone yourselves? What are you guys going to do about that? And then we started looking at the kids that we had been training that had been with us since '02, and they were all 22 years old now, so we decided to start training them. And then we realized there's other kids in other communities that are 16 to 24 years old that aren't really doing anything and would like an outlet to be able to help, but they don't have the skills or the tools to be able to do it. So we're actually going to be piloting a program in Minneapolis later this year. We're going to go and find 16 to 24-year-old kids surrounding an elementary school and train them to do what we do. Because the best solutions are the homegrown solutions. So we empower them with the tools, and then they can kind of do what we do, but in their community.
Yeah. Anything to add?
Nah, he hit it up.
He hit it right out of the park. We're good.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about some of the research because we've had a wonderful information over the weekend of the different research and science that's being done in all of these fields. And I know the Mindful Schools is just finishing up a research study, and you guys there's two different universities studying you. What are you finding? What are you learning from being studied and from the research?
Well, one thing I can say is that we've been getting anecdotal evidence for years, and we know that the only way that we can kind of increase our scope is to get empirical evidence. So we can get some funding. So that's been a big help.
Yeah. And what are they doing? What are they looking at? Are they coming and observing? How is the research going?
It's going well. They're coming in. They're doing self-report studies. They're also doing physiological things, searching, seeing if their lung capacity increases. What other things are they studying there?
A lot of cognitive stuff. They're also doing grades and test scores and attendance, referral rates.
Referrals.
And it's actually going really well. I know, we've been on the ground doing it for a while, so we knew our programs were working. We could look at our kids and see the change in them, but it's actually cool to have numbers behind it. I remember the first time my dad saw the article that the Bloomberg School of Public Health put out. He's like, "Wow, you guys are doing some amazing things," and we're like, "Man, we've been telling you this for 10 years. Come on."
Yeah, it's the same old story.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's the same old story. And what about you, Megan?
No, I totally agree. Nothing beats the anecdotes.
Yeah.
And nothing beats what you see in the classroom or after school and when you're working with the kids. That's where the evidence is, and you feel it in your heart. And yet people really like statistics.
Yeah.
And I was so against research, but then I started realizing, it actually furthers things. And so now I kind of, view it a little bit differently. And I had a classroom teacher tell me recently, she said, Megan, at the end of the school year, I asked the kids to write what they learned during the year. And she said, all of them wrote that they learned mindfulness. And I said, can I have those so that I can add them up and get a statistic about, 98% of your kids said they learned mindfulness. So I view it differently. And we did do a big study recently, and I could say a lot about it, but I think what I'd kind of like to highlight here is that we did a relatively low dose. We visited, our typical program is 5 to 8 weeks, and so the kids got 2 to 3 visits a week for 15 minutes at a time over a 5-week period. And we got significant results. So there's a lot of indications in the early research about, where we're going, what this is going to tell us, and then what other research needs to be done.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. And I'd love for you guys to share, we talked about this backstage, a story. People love stories. So something that is really kind of, when you're down and things are really hard, you can kind of think about that lifts you back up, a story of a success that you've had with one of your programs.
I guess I can start. I guess reflecting on when I first moved back to my neighborhood after I graduated.
You gotta tell them the Madison story.
Madison story.
You gotta tell them that story.
All right, so we do this program in Madison, an artist in residence program, where we're out there for a week. It's where we go and teach all the staff and all the students there yoga and mindfulness, breathing, meditation techniques. And one of the first days there, we saw this little girl there, and she was really introverted, and, she really wasn't around any of the other students there. And, we something gravitated us to her, and we were like, we talked to her one-on-one, and we were trying to figure out what's up with her, what's the story behind her. And, she had a horrible upbringing where, she was abused in a lot of different ways, and, you could see her that in her, her not wanting to be around certain people and stuff like that. So we made sure that we were like showering her with love the entire time we were there. We made her lead a couple of the exercises, and the one-on-one came up to us and gave us like a huge hug and was crying and all this stuff, and we were like, what's going on? And she was like, you have no idea how you all made her happy, and leading the classes. And then the little girl came up to me and gave me a big hug. Mm-hmm. And the one-on-one was like, you have no idea how big this was. Like, not only is she told not to talk to men, but she's definitely not supposed to talk to black people. So, within a week, we broke down a bunch of barriers. And then by the end, the little girl asked me, she was like, well, I don't have a father. Do you think you could be my father? Aww. And I was like, I'll be your spiritual father. I got you. So.
Yeah. And that's one of those moments for pause. Thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful.
I guess for me,
now that he's told the story you wanted him to tell.
Your turn. I love that story. I guess for me, it's just the change in when I go back to our neighborhood that we grew up in, and how when we lived there, it was a certain, when we grew up there, it was a certain way. It was a place filled with love and community, and we were one big, huge family. We had our parents who were awesome, but we also had the people, the older guys in the neighborhood who were older brothers and mentors, and they're just they're responsible for the way we are, just like our parents are, our neighbors. There's a family that lives across the alley. I probably spent just as much time as their house that I did in mine. So it's just one of those things. It was like a place that was full of love. And then crack hit hard, the violence hit, and then the neighborly part and community part left the neighborhood. And so it was just when we moved back after college, it was just it felt like a different place. It wasn't the same place. And then since we've been working there and doing programs at the local elementary school in our neighborhood and like affecting all the kids, they're going home and affecting their parents. And like you can feel the love coming back. So every time I go back there and I think about what it was when we moved back in and where it is now and where it's headed, like it makes me real happy.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. Megan.
I think the stories are sort of endless, and when you say kind of, you know, if you wake up in the morning on the wrong side of the bed, like what is it that inspires you? And for me, it is just actually seeing the kids and being in the classroom, or like being at a training where people are telling us what they're doing with the work and how they're getting requests to do more, and just recognizing the growing interest and recognition about the relevance of all this. But the story that comes to mind right now is a little boy, I think it was a 4th grade class, and he wasn't really participating. And, you know, I think oftentimes teachers want to take that personally, but I always get curious. And so I pulled him outside after or before one of the classes, and I said, I noticed that you're not really doing mindfulness, or I'm not sure if you don't like it, but I was just wondering if you could tell me what's going on. And he said, well, whenever we do mindfulness, I just get angry. And I said, yeah, and is mindfulness the only time that you get angry? And he said, no, I'm angry all the time. And I said, will you do something for me? I said, well, for the next couple days before I come back, will you see if you can notice each time you get angry, and then kind of apply what we've learned, which is what I was telling him, is just notice in your body where you feel angry, take a couple breaths, and then just notice how it changes. And I prepped him that it might not always change. Yeah. And he actually did it. And the reason I knew that he did it, because when I came back 3 days later or whatever it was, his face was completely different. There was this kind of brightness coming through, and he smiled when I came in and participated. So I knew that there was this transformation. And I think what feels so good about that is, you know, that it's something inside them now, that it's not something they have to remember. It's not a list of rules on the wall that they have to read, but that the brightness in his face was the recognition of that he did that for himself. And that's where I think the joy comes for all of us.
Wow. Beautiful. We only have a few more minutes, but I'd love to talk about what's next. I know the two of you, Ollie and Atman, you've really expanded your programs beyond working with children and kind of out into the communities. I'd love to hear a little about what you're doing and kind of what you see for the future with what you're doing in the world.
Okay, so we started doing a lot more adult classes recently, still sticking to people who usually wouldn't have access to yoga and mindfulness programs. Like we do teach at drug treatment centers now. We're at a few mental crisis facilities for people dealing with anxiety and depression and schizophrenia and bipolar disorders. We're working, actually, a program that we've wanted to get started for a long time, and we finally got the green light to do, was going to teach at the juvenile jail. There's a lot of kids that we work with that are in and out of that place, but to actually be able to get in there and get the kids while they're there and give them tools to kind of hopefully never have to be back there or head down to the adult jail is something that we've been trying to get there for maybe like 5 years, but now the doors opened up, so we'll be teaching there starting when we get back. A lot more trainings we're starting to get into to just show people how to do what we do, but in their setting. Am I missing something?
Homeless.
Oh, yeah. There's a homeless men's shelter that we're going to start teaching at pretty soon. And, we just want to get anywhere and everywhere that we can to be able to empower people with the tools that we had the opportunity to learn.
Wow. Thanks. Megan, what about you? Where do you see mindful schools going, and maybe just your personal work in the world?
Yeah. I think the challenge with the growing interest in this field is you're wanting to meet the demand, but you're also wanting to keep the quality and integrity and skill of the instructors. And so I think that's why we're all trying to balance doing direct service and giving trainings, because people really want to bring this back to their own communities. And so I think the growth place for Mindful Schools is just adding more trainings and more resources so that we can be giving people the level of training that we want to see in the presentations.
Yeah.
And so we're creating a certification program so that we can offer a lot more resources than we've been able to in the past, and continue to offer kind of like the highest quality, highest quality programs and highest quality people, kind of highlight all of that and make it available.
Yeah, and you're already using technology to be able to expand that.
Yeah.
I refer people to your foundations class all the time. People are like, I'm interested in mindfulness. What should I do? Is there a class I can go to? And
I have
it's a
to
wonderful
honestly
resource.
say I was so reluctant to have anything online. I like the in-person contact, and I feel like something happens when you're with people in person. And I have been really pleasantly surprised with how effective things can be online and how much people like it.
Yeah. And it's a nice entry point, right? It's private. You're in your home. It's something you can do and not feel, the pressure maybe of when you're in a group environment, at least entering.
Yeah.
Right? We need to have these different ways to enter.
And then you also get the thrill of seeing people from around the world doing the same thing.
Yeah. Do you guys envision using technology, or do you now in your programs?
We got a couple things in the works. They'll be done by the end of the year. So, just keep an eye out. Keep an eye out for it. Keep an eye out for it.
We'll keep an eye on it. We're just about done. I'd love for you all just to kind of take a moment and just close with one word, just one word that really lands you in this space of the work that you're doing in the world, each one of you. Peace.
Love.
Inner peace.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. We're done. This was great.